If you're like me and you've seen a piece of furniture laying on the side of the road, a lot of times it's going to have upholstery to it and you think to yourself it's going to cost a lot more to be able to have that piece reupholstered. For those of you that are curbside shoppers like me, this is an exciting new tip. You can use the one-step chalk-based paint on fabric, but there's a couple of things you need to remember before you get started. The first thing is you're going to want to mist the fabric with just a little bit of water if you're painting an upholstered chair or chaise or sofa for that matter. But if you're going to be painting vinyl or pleather we call it, I would really suggest using our airless sprayer to be able to spray vinyl. But you're also going to have the opportunity to create all kinds of decorative pillows by using the one-step paint as well. A lot of thrift stores that you can go to and you can pick up the pillowcases for just around 25 cents or 50 cents a piece. With the STENCIL and different colors of the one-step, you can create all kinds of decorative pillows to put throughout your home. So I wanted to just give you some tips and show you how to use a STENCIL on fabric as well as how to paint. So the first thing we want to do on this particular linen pillow is I want to make sure that I found a STENCIL that's going to be the exact size of the pillow. A lot of times you can use a wall-based STENCIL for that and cut it to size. These are adhesive stencils that I have in my line that allow you to be able to do an 18 to a 21-inch pillow. So you're just going to take the backing off of it like this. These are best to use adhesive stencils. Another fun thing people don't realize is you can make adhesive stencils from contact paper that you can get in sheets you would ordinarily use as a shelf liner. So those are really fun to make your own stencils. But also, I want you to see about laying this down. Try to make sure that it's lined up and your pattern is nice and even. You know, the fun thing about it is a lot of people don't realize that you can come back and paint fabric that you would have as draperies. You can also add key detailing or any type of detailing on the edges or even at the base. So, all right, so I've got this in place. I want to make sure that I press this in. So what I suggest doing is just taking a plastic putty knife and just making sure that you rub over to get this stencil to lay down really well. You're going to be a lot happier with how it looks. And especially when you get started with the edges, they're going to have a tendency to come up. So you just want to make sure that you press that down. See, here's a little edge here. He's going to give me a hard time. I got to make sure that I'm pressing that down as I'm working my way across. So that starts to allow you to see what it's going to look like once I start to pull that stencil away. So now, once you have your stencil on, you're going to take your one-step paint and you need to be sure and thin it with about 20% water. So I've chosen Ballet White, which I thought would be really pretty on top of this linen color. Now the other thing is, let's say perhaps you found a pillowcase at a thrift store and you didn't like the color of it. You can thin down the one-step paint with 50% water and 50% one-step paint, immerse it and literally dye it any color that you want. Or you can paint the whole pillow before you get started with the actual application of the stencil. But since I'm just going to be working on the regular linen, I'm going to add about 20% water. Just make sure that you get it stirred up really well. It's really important to make sure that you thin the paint, otherwise it's going to be too thick and it's going to hinder it from allowing you to be able to sand it to get it soft again. So you'll notice I'm working with a round hog hair brush. Just load it up. Always offload it. You don't want to have too much paint on your brush when you're coming back in to actually stencil. So just a little bit at a time. I want you to come back on top of it. And it's a stippling motion. Make sure that you don't brush it because that will allow it to get underneath, even in an adhesive stencil. So the stippling motion is probably your first opportunity to be able to learn the stenciling technique. This process is much like doing an actual stenciled wall. Now, I want you to notice something really quickly. See how you don't have to get it really solid? If some of that fabric color is peeking through, that's quite all right. It's gonna make it have a texture, a visual texture. So I'm gonna do just a little bit more here to be able to show you. So dip your brush back into your water and your one step. Make sure you offload it. Make sure that the brush isn't too saturated. And then just continue to come back stenciling. The nice thing about it is when you get through with doing this particular pattern, more than likely it's already dry and you're going to be able to see what it looks like. So let's just lift some of this up to be able to see what we're doing. It's going to come up very easily. See your pattern already? That's why it's so important to make sure that you don't get the paint too thick. Otherwise, you're going to miss out on this wonderful opportunity to be able to have it look like where it's modeled. All right, so here's one that I've already got finished. One thing that's really important to do once your paint is dry, you need to come back with some 400 grit sandpaper and lightly sand it. A lot of people forget to do this, so they'll think, well, my fabric is really rough. It's because that thicker paint has been put on there. You need to make sure that you come back and lightly sand it. You know, the cool thing about it is too, I had some outdoor cushions that I had on my outdoor seating, and if you paint them with one step, lightly sand them in between coats, I would recommend doing 2 coats, and then doing a light coat of wax, you can use them just like you would a sunbrella fabric. Just make sure that you don't put the wax on too heavy at the end, but it really allows it a lot of versatility. So after I've lightly sanded my one application of one step, I'm gonna come back and add just a little bit of wax. So make sure that you dust your pillowcase off really well. You don't want any residue from the sanding. And then you can just come back with some clear wax. Make sure that you load your brush up. Always offload it. You don't want to go directly from the wax onto your piece. And then just very carefully come back and put 100% coverage over everything. Allow it to dry about 20-30 minutes. Buff it with a lint-free rag and you're ready to go. Now, it's your turn to enjoy the backing.